Ethan was the kind of guy who built something out of nothing. He started Circuit Wave more than 15 years ago, with just a small idea and even smaller savings. Back then, he worked behind the counter himself, helping people choose phones, headphones, and anything else that made life a little easier. Over time, his idea grew. Stores opened in different cities, employees came and went, and before he knew it, Ethan had become a boss who didn't walk the floors anymore. He still cared, though, deeply. But lately, something felt off. Customer reviews were getting worse. People said service wasn't what it used to be. Employees were quitting faster than he could hire replacements. Something wasn't right. And being stuck in an office all day, he couldn't see it for himself. So he made a decision. He was going back, not as Ethan Carter, the CEO, but as someone else. Someone no one would recognize. He wanted to see how things really were on the ground, how customers were treated, how workers were managed, what problems hid behind the polished counters and bright store lights. He picked one of the biggest stores, a flagship location where sales numbers looked good on paper, but something about the reports just didn't feel right. If there was trouble, this was where it might be hiding. To pull it off, he needed a disguise. Not some wild costume, just enough to blend in. He got old-style glasses, dyed his hair gray, added a bit of makeup to make his face look more tired. He wore a simple shirt and worn-out shoes. His name now was Dale, a temporary delivery driver coming in for a few days of work. No special treatment, no spotlight, just a regular guy trying to help out. When he arrived at the store early one morning, the manager greeted him. The man's name was Kyle. He was younger than Ethan, maybe early 30s, dressed sharply, always looking like he had somewhere better to be. He barely looked Dale in the eye. "Dale, right? You're here to unload the shipment and help in the back," Kyle said, handing him a basic uniform. "That's me," Dale replied with a smile. "Happy to help." Kyle gave a short nod and walked off, not bothering to say much else. As Dale started his work, he took everything in. The layout of the store, the way employees spoke to each other, how they handled customers. At first glance, it seemed normal. Busy, but normal. But something was off. The staff didn't seem happy. They moved around like they had to, not like they wanted to. Some smiled when customers came in, but others barely looked up from their phones. Then he saw her. An older woman walked in slowly, holding a small bag and looking around like she wasn't sure where to start. She wore a light coat and had a kind face. Her steps were careful, like she didn't want to bother anyone. She approached the main counter where Kyle stood. "Excuse me, sir," she said politely. "I was wondering if you could help me find something." Kyle turned, arms crossed. "Depends. What are you looking for?" "I want to buy a tablet," she said, "so I can video call my grandchildren. They live far away and I miss them." She smiled while saying it, clearly excited about the idea. Kyle looked at her like she had asked for something impossible. Then he looked around like checking if anyone else was listening. "A tablet?" he repeated, almost laughing. "You sure about that? They can be complicated." "Well, I thought I'd give it a try," she said gently. "If someone could explain it to me." "Oh, okay," Kyle said, raising his voice a bit. "Let me get this straight. You've never used a tablet before, right?" "No, I haven't," she admitted. "So you don't know how to turn it on, connect to Wi-Fi, download apps, basically anything?" "I was hoping someone could show me," she said, still smiling. That's when Kyle did something that made Dale's stomach turn. He laughed. Not a friendly laugh, but one that sounded sharp and mean. A few nearby employees glanced over, then quickly looked away. "You know what?" Kyle said, loud enough for others to hear. "Maybe you should stick to your phone. This stuff is for people who actually use technology." The woman blinked, confused by the sudden coldness. "But I just wanted to be honest," Kyle cut in. "You'll probably end up breaking it or losing it. Maybe ask your grandson to pick one for you." There it was. That moment. That line between being busy and being cruel. Between being honest and being disrespectful. Dale watched closely. The woman's smile faded. She stepped back slightly, like she suddenly felt too big for the space she was in. "I'm sorry to bother you. she said quietly, turning away. Dale didn't move right away. He wanted to see if anyone else would step in. Would someone defend her? Help her? Say anything? No one did. Some looked uncomfortable, but none spoke up. One employee even tried to hide a laugh. Another simply turned back to their screen. Dale felt anger rising inside him, but he kept his face calm. He had come here to see the truth, and now he was seeing it. Up close, he walked over to the woman just as she was heading toward the exit. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said gently. "Would you mind waiting a second?" She turned, surprised. "I heard what you were asking for," Dale continued. "And I think I can help." "You can?" she asked, hope returning to her eyes. "Yes, I can," he said. "Let's go back inside and find you the right tablet." She nodded and followed him back in. As they walked, he glanced at Kyle, who was watching with a frown. This wasn't just about a tablet anymore. It was about respect, about kindness, about what kind of company Circuitwave really was, and Ethan, or rather, Dale, was just getting started. After convincing the elderly woman to come back inside, Dale led her to a quieter corner of the store where they could talk without interruptions. He pulled out a chair for her and smiled warmly. "Let's take it step by step," he said. "What exactly do you want this tablet to do?" She hesitated for a moment, as if unsure whether she should trust him, but then she relaxed, seeing the kindness in his eyes. "I just want to see my grandkids," she said softly. "They live so far away now, and I miss them. My daughter told me tablets are easy to use for video calls, but I don't know much about these things." Dale nodded, understanding completely. "That's a wonderful reason to get one," he replied. "And don't worry, we'll find something simple enough for you to use, I promise." He began showing her different models, explaining each feature patiently. He kept his language clear, avoiding technical jargon that might confuse her further. As they talked, he noticed how eager she was to learn. She asked thoughtful questions, listened carefully, and even took notes on a small notepad she pulled from her bag. Watching her made Dale realize something important. This wasn't just about selling a product. It was about helping someone stay connected to the people she loved. Technology wasn't supposed to be intimidating. It was meant to bring people closer together. But as they worked through the options, Dale couldn't ignore the tension building in the background. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Kyle glaring at them from across the store. Other employees whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads or smirking. Clearly, they thought Dale was wasting his time. And theirs. Finally, after nearly 20 minutes of discussion, the woman settled on a basic tablet with a large screen and straightforward controls. Dale helped her set up the purchase, making sure everything was ready for her to start using it right away. "Thank you so much," she said as they wrapped things up. Her voice was filled with gratitude. "You've been so kind. Most people wouldn't have taken the time to explain things like you did." "It's no trouble at all," Dale said honestly. "I'm glad I could help." As she left the store, clutching her new tablet like it was a treasure, Dale felt a mix of emotions. Satisfaction, yes, but also frustration. Why hadn't anyone else stepped in to assist her? Why had Kyle treated her so poorly? Before he could dwell on those thoughts too long, Kyle approached him. The manager's expression was sharp, almost accusing. "What was that?" Kyle demanded, his voice low but firm. "Why'd you waste so much time on her?" Dale raised an eyebrow, pretending to be confused. "Waste time? She bought a tablet, didn't she?" "That's not the point," Kyle snapped. "She's not our target customer. We focus on tech-savvy buyers who spend big. Helping someone like her doesn't bring in money." Dale clenched his jaw but forced himself to stay calm. This was exactly what he'd come here to discover, the truth behind the company's struggles. If this was how customers were being treated, no wonder reviews were dropping. "Maybe not today," Dale said evenly, "but treating every customer well builds loyalty. Word spreads, you know." Kyle rolled his eyes. "Loyalty doesn't pay the bills. Sales do. Stick to unloading boxes, okay? Leave the sales strategy to me." With that, Kyle walked away, leaving Dale standing there, hands shoved into his pockets. For a moment he considered confronting Kyle right then and there, telling him exactly who he really was. But he stopped himself. There was still more to learn. Over the next few hours, Dale continued observing the store's dynamics. He noticed patterns in how employees interacted with customers. Some were friendly and helpful, going out of their way to answer questions or offer advice. Others barely acknowledged shoppers unless they looked like they were ready to make a purchase. And then there were those who acted downright rude, like Kyle. One particularly telling moment came when a young father entered the store with 2 kids in tow. He was clearly frazzled, trying to keep the children entertained while browsing headphones. When he finally asked for assistance, the employee assigned to him sighed audibly before reluctantly walking over. "What do you need?" the employee asked, tapping his foot impatiently. The dad explained he was looking for noise-canceling headphones for traveling. The employee cut him off mid-sentence. "We've got expensive ones over there," he said, pointing vaguely toward a display. "Or cheaper ones here. Pick whichever fits your budget." The dad frowned, clearly overwhelmed by the lack of guidance. After a few awkward moments, he muttered a thanks and hurried out of the store empty-handed. Dale watched the whole exchange, feeling a pang of disappointment. That family could have walked out satisfied, and maybe even loyal customers. If only someone had taken the time to help them properly. Not everyone was like that, though. Later that afternoon, Dale met a part-time cashier named Maria. She was younger than most of the staff, probably in her early 20s, but she carried herself with quiet confidence. While ringing up a customer's purchase, she noticed the person seemed unsure about setting up their new device. "Would you like me to show you how to get started?" Maria offered with a warm smile. "It only takes a minute." The customer brightened immediately. "That would be great. Thank you." Maria guided them through the basics, answering every question patiently. By the time they left, they were smiling and thanking her profusely. Dale waited until Maria finished her shift before approaching her. "You did a good job with that customer," he said casually. "Most people wouldn't have gone the extra mile like that." Maria shrugged modestly. "It's just common sense. If someone buys something, they should leave happy. Otherwise, what's the point?" Her words struck a chord with Dale. Here was someone who understood the heart of the business, not just selling products, but creating positive experiences. Yet despite her efforts, she seemed tired, almost worn down. "Do you enjoy working here?" Dale asked gently. Maria hesitated, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "It's okay," she admitted. "But sometimes, it feels like we're expected to focus only on sales, not people. Like Kyle. He cares more about numbers than how we treat customers. Or each other." Dale nodded, encouraging her to continue. "And when you try to say something," Maria added quietly, "it's like nobody listens. I've tried reporting things before, but nothing changes. So I just keep my head down and do my best." Her honesty hit home. Dale realized that Maria represented the backbone of the company. The hard-working, empathetic employees who genuinely cared about doing the right thing. But they were being overshadowed by toxic leadership and a culture that rewarded results over respect. By the end of the day, Dale had seen enough to confirm his suspicions. The problems at Circuit Wave weren't just isolated incidents, they were systemic. From dismissive managers like Kyle to disengaged employees and neglected customers, the cracks ran deep. Fixing them wouldn't be easy, but Dale knew it had to start somewhere. As he clocked out and headed home, still disguised as Dale the delivery driver, he couldn't stop thinking about the elderly woman, the frustrated father, and Maria's quiet determination. These were real people, with real needs and feelings. They deserved better, and Ethan Carter, the CEO behind the disguise, was determined to give it to them. The next morning, Dale arrived at the store early again, determined to dig deeper. He knew he had seen enough to understand the problem, but he needed more proof, more stories, more examples of how this toxic environment affected not just customers, but employees too. As he started unloading boxes in the back room, he overheard snippets of conversation between some of the workers. They were talking about Kyle, their voices hushed but tense. "He doesn't care about anyone," one of them muttered. "Just his numbers." "Yeah, well, good luck saying that to him," another replied bitterly. Last time I tried, he made my life hell for weeks. Dale kept working quietly, pretending not to listen. But inside, his frustration grew. This wasn't leadership, it was intimidation. And it wasn't just affecting morale, it was poisoning the entire workplace culture. Later that morning, Dale decided to spend more time observing behind the scenes. The warehouse area was always bustling with activity, but today felt different. Some employees seemed unusually stressed, rushing around like they were afraid of being late for something, or someone. He noticed Maria again, stacking shelves near the electronics section. She looked tired, her shoulders slumped as she worked. Dale approached her cautiously, wanting to learn more without prying too hard. "How's it going?" he asked casually, picking up a box to help her. Maria glanced at him, managing a small smile. "It's fine. Just busy." "You look like you've got a lot on your plate," Dale said gently. "Need a hand?" She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Sure. Thanks." As they worked together, Dale saw an opportunity to ask more questions. "So, what's the hardest part about working here?" he ventured carefully. Maria sighed, setting down a heavy box before answering. "Honestly, it's knowing you can do everything right and still feel invisible. Like no matter how hard you try, it's never enough." Dale frowned. "What do you mean?" "Well," Maria explained, lowering her voice, "if you don't meet your sales targets, Kyle comes down on you. Hard. But even if you do, he finds something else to criticize. And heaven forbid you speak up about anything. He hates when people question him." Her words painted a picture of fear and frustration. Employees weren't just underperforming because they didn't care. They were scared to make mistakes or stand out. The pressure was suffocating. "But you seem like you're doing great," Dale said. "I saw how you helped that customer yesterday. You went above and beyond." Maria shrugged. "I try, but sometimes it feels pointless, like, why bother, you know? No one notices unless you mess up." Her honesty hit Dale hard. Here was someone who clearly cared about her job, putting in effort despite feeling unappreciated. Yet instead of being supported, she was pushed aside by a system that rewarded aggression over kindness. Before they could talk further, Kyle appeared in the aisle, clipboard in hand. "What are you two doing?" he demanded sharply. "This isn't break time." "We're restocking," Maria replied quickly, straightening up. Kyle narrowed his eyes at Dale. "You're supposed to be handling deliveries, not chatting. Get back to work." Dale forced a neutral expression, nodding politely. "Yes, sir." As Kyle walked away, Maria let out a quiet sigh. "Sorry about that. He's always watching." "It's okay," Dale said softly. "Don't worry about me." But he couldn't shake the image of Maria shrinking under Kyle's glare. It reminded him of the elderly woman from the other day. The same dismissive tone, the same lack of respect. This wasn't just about individual moments anymore. It was a pattern, a cycle of negativity that fed on itself. Later that afternoon, Dale found himself in the break room during his lunch hour. A few employees were sitting at the table eating quietly. One of them, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, was venting to a coworker. "I swear if I have to deal with one more customer yelling at me because of Kyle's policies, I'm done," he said, shaking his head. "He treats us like robots, not people." The coworker nodded sympathetically. "Tell me about it. Remember last week when Tina got yelled at for giving a refund? That wasn't even her fault." Dale listened intently, piecing together the puzzle. It wasn't just Kyle's behavior toward customers. It was his treatment of employees that created such a hostile environment. People were afraid to take initiative, to solve problems, or even to show basic compassion. Fear ruled the store, not teamwork. After finishing his lunch, Dale wandered back onto the sales floor. He spotted a young couple browsing laptops, looking overwhelmed by the variety of options. An employee nearby ignored them completely, scrolling through his phone instead. Feeling restless, Dale stepped in. "Can I help you find something?" he asked warmly. The couple looked relieved. "Yes, please. We're trying to decide which laptop is best for schoolwork." For the next 10 minutes, Dale guided them through the choices, explaining each model's features and helping them narrow down their options. By the end, they left smiling, thanking him for his patience. As he watched them go, Dale felt a mix of pride and sadness. Pride because he'd been able to help. Sadness because none of the actual employees had bothered to step in, not even once. By now, Kyle had noticed Dale's repeated interactions with customers. He cornered him later that evening, his tone icy. "What's with all the meddling?" Kyle snapped. "You're here to unload boxes, not play sales associate." Dale met his gaze calmly. "I'm just trying to help. If someone needs assistance, shouldn't we give it to them?" Kyle scoffed. "Not if it wastes time. Your job is clear. Stick to it." Dale nodded slowly, keeping his expression neutral. Inside, though, his resolve hardened. He had seen enough. The evidence was undeniable. Kyle's management style was destroying both customer satisfaction and employee morale. That night, as Dale drove home, he replayed the day's events in his mind. Every interaction, every conversation, every moment of tension. He thought about Maria, whose quiet determination deserved recognition, about the elderly woman and the young couple, both seeking connection and guidance, about the countless others who walked into the store hoping for help and walked out disappointed. Ethan Carter, the real Ethan Carter, knew what he had to do. The disguise had served its purpose. Now it was time to shed it and face the truth head-on. But first he needed one final piece of the puzzle, something concrete, something undeniable, because when he revealed himself, there could be no room for excuses. The next day, Dale arrived at the store with a new sense of purpose. He knew he was close to uncovering everything he needed, but there was still one critical piece missing, proof that Kyle's behavior wasn't just an isolated issue, but part of a larger pattern. And for that, he'd have to dig deeper behind the scenes. He started his shift by heading straight to the warehouse again. The back area was chaotic as usual, filled with workers rushing to organize shipments and restock shelves. But today, Dale decided to take a closer look at how things operated beyond the sales floor. If this toxic culture had roots anywhere, it was here. As he worked alongside the staff, he struck up casual conversations, pretending to be curious about their routines. One older employee, who introduced himself simply as Tom, seemed eager to talk. Tom had been with Circuit Wave for over a decade, long before Ethan Carter even founded the company. His voice carried a mix of pride and weariness. "You've seen a lot of changes around here, huh?" Dale asked while stacking boxes together. Tom chuckled dryly. "Yeah, you could say that. Used to be a good place to work. People cared about each other. Now? Not so much." "What changed?" Dale pressed gently. Tom hesitated, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "It's all about numbers now. Sales targets, bonuses. They don't care how we treat customers or each other, as long as the cash register keeps ringing." Dale nodded thoughtfully. "That must be tough." "It is," Tom admitted. "And it's not just us. Customers feel it too. Some of them come in looking for help, and they leave feeling worse than when they walked in. That manager, Kyle, he doesn't care about any of that. He only cares about what makes him look good." Dale felt a pang of sadness hearing this. Tom's words echoed what Maria and others had already told him. Kyle's leadership style wasn't just ineffective, it was destructive. It created a ripple effect that hurt everyone involved. Later that morning, Dale found himself alone with Maria during a quiet moment in the electronics section. She seemed distracted, flipping through inventory sheets without much focus. Sensing her frustration, Dale approached her cautiously. "Hey," he said softly. "You okay?" Maria looked up, forcing a smile. "Yeah, I'm fine, just tired, I guess." "You don't seem fine," Dale replied honestly. "Want to talk about it?" She hesitated, then sighed. "It's stupid, really. I tried reporting Kyle once before, for something similar to what happened with that lady, but nothing changed. Upper management didn't care. They said as long as sales stayed high, everything else was secondary." Her confession confirmed what Dale feared most. The problem wasn't just Kyle. It ran deeper all the way up the chain of command. Leaders were turning a blind eye to bad behavior because profits were still rolling in. But at what cost? Before Maria could say more, another employee rushed over whispering urgently, "Kyle's coming this way." Sure enough, Kyle appeared moments later, clipboard in hand. His sharp eyes scanned the aisle before landing on Maria and Dale. "What's going on here?" he demanded. "This isn't a chat room." "Just checking stock levels," Maria replied quickly, avoiding eye contact. Kyle frowned, his gaze lingering on Dale. "I thought I told you to stay out of trouble. Stick to deliveries." "Yes, sir," Dale said politely, stepping back as Kyle moved on. Maria let out a shaky breath. "Sorry about that, he doesn't like distractions." "It's okay," Dale assured her. "Don't worry about me." But inside, his anger simmered. How many times had employees like Maria and Tom been silenced or ignored? How many customers had left feeling disrespected because no one dared to speak up? Determined to gather more evidence, Dale spent the rest of the day observing interactions between staff and management. What he saw shocked him. Employees who fell short of their targets were publicly reprimanded during meetings. Those who questioned Kyle's decisions were given extra tasks or assigned undesirable shifts. Fear hung thick in the air, suffocating any sense of teamwork or trust. One particularly striking moment came when a young delivery driver accidentally dropped a box of fragile gadgets. Instead of helping him clean up, Kyle stormed over, yelling loud enough for everyone to hear. "You clumsy idiot," Kyle barked. "Do you know how much those are worth? This comes out of your paycheck." The driver stammered an apology, visibly shaken. Nearby, employees froze, unsure whether to intervene or stay silent. No one did either. Dale clenched his fists, resisting the urge to step in. This wasn't just poor management, it was bullying. And it had gone unchecked for far too long. By the end of the day, Dale had collected enough information to paint a clear picture. Kyle's actions weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a systemic issue. Employees were afraid to report problems because they knew nothing would change. Meanwhile, customers suffered as a result of the toxic environment. That evening, as Dale clocked out, he made a decision. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow he would reveal himself, not just as Dale the delivery driver, but as Ethan Carter, the CEO of Circuit Wave. He owed it to Maria, Tom, and every other hardworking employee who deserved better. He owed it to the customers who came seeking help and left feeling invisible. But first, he needed to prepare. He wanted to confront Kyle in front of everyone, exposing his behavior once and for all. For that, he needed undeniable proof and a plan. Driving home, Dale replayed the day's events in his mind. Every harsh word, every dismissive glance, every moment of fear or frustration. He thought about the elderly woman mocked for asking questions, the young couple ignored while browsing laptops, the delivery driver humiliated for a simple mistake. Each story weighed heavily on him, fueling his determination to make things right. Ethan Carter, the real Ethan Carter, was ready to step forward, ready to face the truth head-on, ready to rebuild the company from the ground up, starting with respect and kindness. Because if Circuit Wave was going to survive, it needed more than profits, it needed heart. The next morning, Ethan woke up earlier than usual. He didn't put on the disguise this time. Instead, he dressed in his usual sharp suit, the kind that screamed authority, but also confidence. This wasn't about blending in anymore. It was about standing out. Today was the day he would reveal himself as the CEO of Circuit Wave, confront Kyle, and set things right for everyone who had suffered under his toxic leadership. As he drove to the store, Ethan replayed his plan in his mind. He'd call an all-staff meeting first thing in the morning, before customers arrived. He wanted every employee, from cashiers to delivery drivers, to hear what he had to say. More importantly, he wanted them to see him step forward as their leader, not just some distant figurehead sitting in an office miles away. When he walked through the doors of the store, heads turned immediately. Some employees froze, unsure why the CEO himself was walking into their branch unannounced. Others whispered nervously, wondering if something big was about to happen. Kyle, however, looked confused, and maybe even a little annoyed. "Can I help you?" Kyle asked, stepping forward with his clipboard. His tone was polite but clipped, clearly expecting someone lower down the chain to handle whatever issue brought the CEO here. Ethan smiled faintly, letting the tension build for just a moment longer. Then he spoke loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Yes, actually," Ethan said. "I'm here because I've been working undercover at this store for the past few days." The room went silent. Employees stared at him, wide-eyed, trying to process what they were hearing. Kyle blinked rapidly, looking like he'd been caught off guard for the first time in years. "You, what?" Kyle stammered. "I've been posing as a delivery driver named Dale," Ethan explained calmly. "And let me tell you, it's been eye-opening." He paused, scanning the faces around him. Some looked shocked, others curious, and a few, like Maria and Tom, seemed relieved, as though they'd suspected something wasn't quite right with Dale all along. "I came here because I heard rumors about declining customer satisfaction scores and low employee morale," Ethan continued. "But numbers only tell part of the story, so I decided to see for myself what was really going on." Kyle shifted uncomfortably, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. Ethan could see the wheels turning in his head, trying to figure out how much damage control he needed to do. "What I found disturbed me deeply," Ethan said, his voice steady but firm. "I saw customers ignored, mocked, and dismissed. I saw employees afraid to speak up or take initiative because of fear, not respect, for their manager. And I saw firsthand how one person's behavior can poison an entire workplace culture. At EOS." "That?" Ethan turned directly to Kyle. The younger man's face flushed red, partly from embarrassment and partly from anger. "Let me give you an example," Ethan said, pulling out his phone. He pressed play on a video clip, one he'd recorded discreetly during his time undercover. In it, Kyle could be seen mocking an elderly woman who simply wanted help buying a tablet. The audio was clear, Kyle's sarcastic tone, the laughter of other employees, and the quiet devastation in the woman's voice as she apologized for bothering him. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Employees exchanged glances, some shaking their heads in disbelief. Kyle opened his mouth to defend himself, but Ethan cut him off. "This isn't the only incident," Ethan said, his tone icy now. "I've documented multiple examples of disrespect, not just toward customers, but toward your own team. You've created a culture of fear instead of trust. And frankly, that's unacceptable." Kyle tried to recover, stepping closer to Ethan. "Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Sales numbers are higher than ever under my leadership. Sometimes tough decisions have to be made." "Tough decisions?" Ethan interrupted, sharply. "Is it tough to treat people with basic human decency? Is it tough to show empathy when someone asks for help? Because those aren't decisions, they're responsibilities." Kyle faltered, unable to respond. For once, his usual bravado failed him. Ethan took a deep breath, softening his tone slightly. "This isn't just about you, Kyle. It's about the ripple effect your actions have had on this entire store. Employees feel undervalued. Customers walk away dissatisfied, and no amount of profit can fix that." Turning back to the group, Ethan addressed the rest of the staff. "To those of you who stayed silent because you were afraid to speak up, I understand. But silence only lets bad behavior continue. To those of you who tried to report these issues and were ignored, I apologize. That stops now." He locked eyes with Maria, who stood near the back of the group, her hands clasped tightly together. She looked nervous but hopeful. "Maria," Ethan said, nodding toward her. "Step forward, please." She hesitated for a moment, then moved cautiously to stand beside him. Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Maria has shown incredible integrity during her time here," he announced. "Despite the challenges, she's consistently gone above and beyond to help both customers and coworkers. Her dedication hasn't gone unnoticed, not by me, and certainly not by the people she serves." Maria blushed, clearly overwhelmed by the unexpected praise. That's why I'm promoting her to regional manager effective immediately, Ethan declared. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the crowd. Even Maria gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. Wait, you can't just… Kyle started, but Ethan silenced him with a raised hand. Yes, I can, Ethan said firmly. Because this company belongs to all of us, not just one person, and it's time we focused on building a culture based on respect, teamwork, and kindness. With that, Ethan turned back to Kyle. You're fired. Pending further investigation into labor violations and harassment claims, of course. Pack your things and leave the premises immediately. For a moment, Kyle looked like he might argue, but seeing the resolve in Ethan's expression and the collective relief washing over the faces of his former employees, he knew there was no point. Without another word, he stormed off toward the office to gather his belongings. The room erupted into quiet cheers and murmurs of approval. Employees hugged each other, some even shedding tears of relief. For the first time in months, or maybe years, they felt like they had a real chance to turn things around. Ethan raised his hands to quiet the crowd again. This is just the beginning, he said. We're going to rebuild this store and this company from the ground up. Starting today, we'll implement mandatory ethics training for every employee. We'll create anonymous reporting systems so no one has to fear retaliation for speaking up. And most importantly, we'll measure success not just by sales numbers, but by how well we treat each other and our customers. He paused, letting his words sink in. Circuit Wave isn't just a business. It's a community, and communities thrive when people care about each other. Let's make sure that happens. Here. As Ethan wrapped up the meeting, he noticed Maria wiping away tears. He leaned down to speak to her privately. You earned this, he said softly. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. She nodded, smiling through her tears. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. I know you won't, Ethan replied. Now go show everyone what true leadership looks like. With that, he stepped back, watching as the employees began to regroup and refocus. The energy in the room was different now, hopeful, determined, alive. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was a start. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan felt proud, not just of his company, but of the people who made it possible. Months passed after that fateful day when Ethan revealed himself as the Undercover CEO. The changes he promised weren't just empty words, they were put into action immediately. New policies rolled out across all Circuit Wave stores, but this particular branch became a testing ground for something bigger, rebuilding trust, restoring morale, and creating a workplace culture rooted in kindness and respect. Maria stepped into her new role as regional manager with determination and grace. At first, she felt overwhelmed by the responsibility. After years of being dismissed or ignored, suddenly everyone was looking to her for guidance. But Ethan stayed close during the transition, mentoring her and offering support whenever she needed it. Remember, he told her one afternoon as they reviewed customer feedback reports, being a leader isn't about having all the answers. It's about listening and making sure others feel heard. She nodded, taking his advice to heart. Slowly but surely, Maria began transforming the store from the inside out. She held team meetings where employees could voice concerns without fear of judgment. She implemented flexible schedules so part-timers like herself could balance work and personal life more easily. And she made it a point to thank people, not just for hitting sales targets, but for small acts of kindness that often went unnoticed. The difference was remarkable. Employees who once dreaded coming to work now greeted each other warmly. Customers noticed the change too. Where before they'd been met with indifference or worse, they now found friendly faces eager to help. Even the elderly woman who had been mocked months earlier returned to the store, this time smiling brightly as she browsed the tablet section. I came back because I wanted to say thank you, she told Maria when their paths crossed near the checkout counter. That day I visited, someone here treated me like I mattered. It meant a lot. Maria smiled, remembering how Dale, now Ethan, had stepped in to assist her. We're glad you came back, she said sincerely, and we'll always treat you with respect. Word spread quickly about the improvements at the flagship store. Customer reviews skyrocketed, not just for product quality, but for service excellence. Other branches started adopting similar practices inspired by Maria's success. For the first time in years, Circuit Wave wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. One sunny afternoon, Ethan decided to pay the store another visit, not undercover this time, but openly as the CEO. When he walked in, the staff greeted him warmly, many shaking his hand or thanking him for what he'd done. Maria led him on a tour of the newly renovated space, pointing out updates they'd made based on employee suggestions. "This used to be such a stressful place to work," she admitted, as they stood near the electronics display. "Now people actually enjoy being here. They care about doing their best, not because they're scared, but because they want to." Ethan nodded, feeling a deep sense of pride. "That's exactly what I hoped for. This is your achievement, Maria. You've set an example for every store in our company." She blushed modestly. "I couldn't have done it without you believing in me." As they continued walking, Ethan spotted the elderly woman again. This time she was helping another senior shopper navigate the tablet options, explaining features patiently and clearly. Her confidence was inspiring. "You see that?" Ethan said, nodding toward her. "That's the kind of impact we can have. One person helps another, and suddenly the whole community benefits." Maria smiled. "It's amazing, isn't it?" "Yes," Ethan replied. "It really is." Later that evening, Ethan gathered the entire staff for a celebratory dinner at a nearby restaurant. As plates of food were passed around, laughter filled the air. The tension that once defined the workplace was gone, replaced by camaraderie and shared purpose. Ethan stood up to speak, raising his glass. "To everyone here tonight, I want to thank you, not just for your hard work, but for your courage. Change doesn't happen overnight, especially when it requires standing up to negativity. But you did it. Together, we turned this store around." Paused, looking around the table at familiar faces. "I believe in this company, not because of its profits, but because of the people who make it run. You're the heart of Circuit Wave, and as long as we keep putting people first, there's nothing we can't achieve." Applause broke out, followed by cheers and whistles. Some employees wiped away tears, moved by Ethan's words. Others raised their glasses high, celebrating the journey they'd been through together. After the meal, Ethan lingered outside with Maria, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The parking lot buzzed with energy as employees said their goodbyes, promising to see each other tomorrow. "You know," Ethan said thoughtfully, "when I started this undercover mission, I thought I was looking for problems. But what I found instead was hope. Hope in people like you, Maria. Hope in the customers who reminded us why we do what we do. And hope in the idea that even in tough times, we can choose to be better." Maria looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "Do you think other companies could learn from this?" "I think anyone can," Ethan replied. "It's not about fancy strategies or expensive campaigns. It's about remembering that businesses are built on relationships. Treat people right and everything else will fall into place." They stood there quietly for a moment, soaking in the peacefulness of the evening. Then Maria turned to him with a grin. "So, does this mean no more undercover missions?" Ethan laughed. "For now, yes, but don't worry. If I ever need to go incognito again, I'll let you know." As they parted ways, Ethan climbed into his car, reflecting on everything that had happened over the past few months. From the moment he disguised himself as Dale to the transformation he witnessed today, the experience had changed him. He realized that leadership wasn't about authority, it was about connection, about seeing people not as numbers or roles, but as individuals with hopes, dreams, and challenges. Driving home, Ethan couldn't help but smile. Circuit Wave wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was heading in the right direction. More importantly, it was becoming a place where people felt valued, a place where kindness mattered as much as profit, a place where communities came together, one interaction at a time. And for Ethan Carter, that was worth more than any number on a balance sheet.